Ice-capped mountains, wild rivers, and isolated coves. Southern Alaska may be spectacular, but this remote land can be a harsh and treacherous place. Recent reports have caught my eye of fishermen disappearing, vanishing without a trace. But for every case that makes the papers, others appear to go unreported.
Sometimes people will be on a trip, just having a pleasure day, and they never come back.
My name's Jeremy Wade. For many years, I've been investigating mysterious disappearances on rivers and lakes, revealing the strange and sometimes deadly creatures that lurk beneath the surface. In Alaska, mysterious deaths are commonly blamed on boating accidents or bad weather. But with a growing case file, I'm beginning to wonder if these deep, forbidding waters are in fact concealing a cold water killer. Every year, people venture into Alaska's remote waterways, never to return. They vanish, leaving no clues, no witnesses, and no bodies. The extreme weather is often blamed for this loss of life, but is that too easy a conclusion? Many fishermen are among the death toll. So I've come here to look beneath the surface, to find out if they're being lost to something other than the weather. I want to know if there's something in the water that's killing people. One recent tragedy is typical. There are only a few clues, but enough to arouse my suspicions. A fishing boat was discovered upturned on a mud bank. Although their life jackets were found, the two occupants had vanished. If bad weather had been closing in, being experienced fishermen, they would have put their life jackets on, but they didn't. The only things missing besides their bodies were their fishing rods.
From what little is known about the incident, it seems that something must have caught the victims by surprise.
It's very little to go on, but with so many fishermen killed in Alaska, I need to know if that deadly surprise is lurking in these waters. My investigation begins where their upturned boat was discovered, on the eastern edge of Prince William Sound, off Alaska's south coast. The evidence of the fatal fishing trip was found in a remote bay, where a branch of the Copper River Delta drains into the sea.
When the tide comes in, all of this is underwater, but at low tide like now, you just get this massive expanse of mudflat, and it's here where the boat was found. Now, how it got here, nobody knows for sure. One possibility is that whatever happened somewhere out at sea, and the boat washed in on the tide. But another possibility is that something happened inland, and the boat actually got here by floating down the river.
Since the fatal encounter could have happened along the coast or upriver, I've got double the normal challenge. The culprit could either be in freshwater or out at sea. I decide to start in the type of water I know best. The nearest town is Cordova, a remote fishing community of 2,000 people. If anyone can tell me what's in the rivers here, it will be the locals.
We got these gigantic king salmon.
Yeah, a friend of mine caught one like about 10 days ago out here in a gill net. Yeah, it was a 5-foot window.
So whereabouts was that? It was,
on the Copper River salmon.
They come in there and they spawn right here. Is it shallow?
They tell me that large king salmon breed in the Copper River, and that I should meet a man who has been fishing here for 30 years, river guide, Stan Groves.
I've seen lots of people get in trouble, underestimating what was in this river. And once you fall in that river, if you get out of sight, you're gone.
What's the biggest fish that most people can realistically expect to hook in this river?
It's possible for a salmon to be up to 90 pounds.
So that's the king salmon?
Yeah, Chinook, king salmon.
This is no ordinary salmon. Growing up to 5 foot long with a maximum recorded weight of 135 pounds, it's the giant of all the Pacific salmon. The fish's size and the river's power are a dangerous mix.
This water's fast. When a big fish hits that line and takes off, it knocks you off your balance.
So you've actually seen people pretty much pulled into the water by king salmon?
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it at all. Big cowboy, 6'4", 235 pounds. There ain't no fish in this river's gonna pull me off my feet. Pretty quick you hear a kerplunk and there's these hats floating down the river. My son had to jump out of the back of the boat and grab him and pick him up on the bank. He shut up after that.
If a man bigger and heavier than I am can be pulled into these waters so easily, I need to think carefully about my approach. I also hear a confirmed report of a young man dying after tangling with a king salmon. In Washington state, Harry Koa was spearfishing while his brothers watched from the bank. When he speared a large king salmon, the fish took off with such force he was wrenched into the icy river. According to reports, his battered body was recovered along with the remains of the 65-pound monster fish that pulled him to his death. But could the king salmon be behind some of the disappearances here in Alaska? This is not a fish I'm familiar with, so I'm not entirely sure what to expect. The largest salmon breed in the Copper River tributaries. To reach a place where I'm likely to find one requires a dangerous voyage through 17 miles of uninhabited wilderness. I'm feeling out of my element in these icy, turbulent rapids. But the mighty king salmon has the power to swim against this white water on its 200-mile run from the sea to its breeding grounds upstream.
The thing about this water, when you look at it up close, it's quite cloudy, quite milky. You can't really see into it, and that's because it comes off a glacier. It's carrying very fine sediment. It's cold, it's very cold. So this is where the salmon are. They are totally equipped for this kind of water.
The salmon can manage these extreme conditions, but if I was dragged into these waters, I'd either drown or be dead from hypothermia in minutes. The fish rest in pockets of calm water on their way upstream, so that's where I'll try to intercept them. Salmon stop feeding when they leave the sea to spawn, so to hook one of these monsters, the locals tell me I have to use an unusual bait.
Those are actually king salmon eggs. Now, salmon don't normally feed in fresh water, but if you drag this across their face, they will go for it. One theory behind that, nobody knows for sure, is that maybe they recognize the eggs, but they will be from another individual. So it's the salmon trying to put the competition out of business. Final detail, I'm using a 100-pound breaking strain braided line. The drag here, I've got it screwed up almost as far as it will go, and it's all I can do to pull that line off the spool. I can feel it cutting into my fingers, but you need it this tight because if the fish get up any momentum in this current, they're going to take a lot of stopping.
If I do hook a king salmon, I must remember it's not safe to step any further into this river. A fisherman's determination to never let go of the rod can be overwhelming. But if I get pulled into this icy current so far from help, I could end up as another deadly statistic. My drag is set to maximum, my feet are firmly planted. I'm ready to test the power of this mighty fish for myself.
Don't know if that was anything or not. Most other fish, other than salmon, you wouldn't tend to just stay in one spot, casting repeatedly. But the thing about salmon is there might be some holding up here, but others are going to be working their way upriver. So I'm varying the approach a little bit, but waiting for the fish to come to me.
Somewhere hidden in this churning current, the king salmon are on the move. And suddenly, something grabs the bait.
Fish!
I've come to Alaska to find out if some kind of monster fish is behind mysterious cases of fishermen vanishing without trace. My first suspect is the biggest fish of the river, the king salmon. They have been known to drag fishermen into the water, and I'm hoping to put this fish's legendary power to the test.
Fish!
One of these bruisers is now on the end of my line.
Big fish in heavy current. Amazing how much strength it's got. Yeah, it's quite close, I think. It's quite close. Here it comes. Yep! There we go. There we go. Oh, still a lot of strength in that fish. Wow, and that's the male. Fantastic. There we go. Whew. Okay, here we go. So this is a male king salmon.
The males transform as they head upriver. Their jaw distorts and develops sharp canines, ready for gruesome battles in the spawning grounds.
It swam over 160 miles to be here. Hasn't fed the entire way. It's been just running on body fat, so it's been losing weight as it gets up here. I'm just amazed that it has so much energy.
This 35-pounder put up an arm-wrenching fight, but fish twice this size have been caught here. I wonder if the king salmon could indeed be behind some of the unexplained disappearances in this part of Alaska.
There you go. There was a moment there where I was actually struggling to keep my balance on these boulders. The strength of that fish took me a little bit by surprise. It'd be very easy to end up in this fast water, and fast water doesn't need to be very deep to overpower you. You know, knee deep or so, it can knock you over. I can imagine a scenario where just that desire to go too much out into the current could spell trouble.
The loss of a lone fisherman in this way is very believable. But in the recent case where the upturned boat was found, 2 people were fishing together.
What about the second person? Well, you see incidences all the time where somebody goes to help a person who's already in trouble. They both end up in trouble. So, yeah, 2 people quite possibly.
But something still doesn't add up. In this case, the victim's boat and life jackets were discovered. So why were their bodies never found? The water here is just too shallow for 2 people to completely disappear. Even a scavenging grizzly would have left some evidence behind. In this case, I don't think they were fishing upriver at all. Their boat was found where the river meets the sea. If this fatal accident didn't happen in freshwater, I must turn my attention to the coast. Did these fishermen encounter something large and powerful at the river mouth? I need to find out what predators patrol the shoreline. In this very remote stretch of coast, there are few people around to ask. But my investigation takes an unexpected turn when I track down Boone Hodgin, the manager of a small fishing lodge on one of the inlets.
Oh. I'm looking into an incident of some people who went missing in this area and just wondered if you knew anything about any disappearances in this inlet.
Actually, we get quite a few disappearances each year, but it's something that only the locals hear about. We're so remote that it doesn't actually reach beyond this area. Now this year we've had about 5 already, and there's a lot of mystery to how these people disappear. Sometimes people will be on a trip, just like on a day like this, and they never come back.
What he tells me appears to confirm my suspicions. Fishermen are vanishing even in calm water, and these deaths are not even making the newspapers. It appears the cases I've read about are just the tip of the iceberg. Boone recounts one story of a chilling disappearance. Donald Graham left Cordova to fish alone, and later that day his boat was spotted spinning in circles. The engine was running, but no one was at the wheel. It's another case where a fisherman just vanishes.
Do you have large animals potentially dangerous that could be a factor if you're out on the water?
Yeah, we've got sharks in the area, just right down the beach from us.
Sharks actually in the inlet here?
Yes.
You're saying that if I take a boat out here, you can pretty well guarantee that I'll see a shark?
100%, and they're really big.
These cold northern waters are not the usual shark hunting grounds, but it seems this coast is visited by a relative of the great white. Salmon sharks can grow as big as the fearsome bull shark, and there are unconfirmed reports of them reaching over 14 feet. I'm on the water for less than 10 minutes when dorsal fins start circling close to our boat.
That is unmistakably a shark fin. This is very interesting. Once you see one shark here, you just start seeing them everywhere. They're actually quite discreet. You just see a few inches of fin cutting the surface. The thing that we don't know is that just the tip of the iceberg. Are there many more down below? But definitely just from the ones that I can see, if you were to fall in the water here, you would not be very far from a shark.
Very few people fish for these sharks. So unlike the highly prized king salmon, this is not a fish that people here will risk their lives trying to catch. Fishermen are not being pulled in trying to land one. But what if a person fell in or capsized in these waters? Would these large predators then attack? Sharks are normally cold-blooded, slow and sluggish in icy waters. But salmon sharks are very different. These killers are warm-blooded. They have a clever heat exchange system that effectively traps heat in the fine blood vessels in the shark's core, thereby preventing heat loss to the surrounding water. This ensures that their muscles, eyes, and brain are powered by blood up to 70 degrees warmer than the water around them. So even in icy temperatures, these predators move fast and hit hard. They have the teeth and the power. But what I need to find out is whether they also have the disposition to attack. These sharks are not known man-eaters, but in these remote waters, few people choose to swim, though sharks rarely encounter humans. To find out if salmon sharks would attack people, I now realize that I'm going to have to put my rod aside and test their aggression the only way I know.
It looks like there's no alternative to using myself as bait.
In icy Alaskan waters, I'm looking for a fish that could be behind the mysterious disappearances of local fishermen. And I've just found a 10-foot suspect. There have been no reports of salmon sharks attacking people, but that's not surprising. Swimming is hardly popular in their cold, remote hunting grounds. But what if someone falls in? With no witnesses to the many fatal accidents, I have to test the gruesome possibility that shark attacks are the reason few bodies are ever found. Little is known about salmon-shark behavior. Shark scientist Scott Anderson is in Prince William Sound studying how they hunt.
These salmon sharks are up here to feed on salmon, and they're very aggressive when they're feeding. They get it right on their nose, and they just will chase it right down. And, you know, they go for other things that are in the water when they get excited. They see jellyfish, and they look at them, and we've had them bite our hydrophone or a camera.
These large-eyed predators launch their attacks from below, catapulting themselves out of the water to seize their prey. It's the same mode of attack as their close relative, the great white. Great whites are known to mistake humans for food. Is the same true for salmon sharks?
The scenario of somebody in the water struggling, what might happen?
I don't think that would be a big problem, but there's always the chance that they could be territorial in a way that we don't understand, and somebody might give the wrong cues, and one may try to bite a person at that time. So there's the potential that they could try to bite a person, but nobody knows.
If these sharks are hunting near a fishing boat, what happens if someone falls into the feeding frenzy? To find out, I need to take a calculated gamble, and Scott has agreed to come with me. We head towards a location very close to land, where Scott thinks we'll find plenty of sharks. Before I get into the water, I'm anxious to get a feel for the shark's behavior below the surface. So I send down a remotely operated underwater camera, which sends a live feed back to the boat.
Big jellyfish. Oh! There's a shark right through the screen. Right, where's that gone? Where's that gone? Here, there it is, there it is. It's circling. Circling. Is it my imagination, or is that actually quite inquisitive? That's inquisitive, that's coming, that is inquisitive.
I'm beginning to wonder whether getting into the water is the best idea.
And that looked like it was definitely investigating.
The sharks are clearly very curious. Now to test their behavior in their most aggressive state. We need to get them into their feeding mode by putting bait in the water.
We are seeing if we can get the sharks interested in herring. We're not using hooks though, we're just clipping them on.
If these sharks go for the bait, this will set us up to replicate the scenario I'm interested in testing. What happens if a fisherman falls overboard when a pack of sharks is hunting next to the boat?
Pull it.
Yeah,
sink a little bit.
Sink a little and then slowly wind it. Good.
Here we
Yeah,
go.
he's coming for it. Yeah, there he is. Coming up. He's following it.
My goal is not to catch a shark, but to switch on their hunting mode.
Scott, I think what I'll do in a sec is actually give you the rod, and if you can keep them interested,
All right.
I'll go and suit up.
Okay, good deal. All right.
What we're going to do now is get in with them. It does sound potentially rather a crazy idea, but it's the only way we're going to gauge how they react to people when they're actually in that feeding mode.
Scott says I should be okay with only a dry suit and a snorkel. I hope he's right. Which internal organ makes up a quarter of the salmon shark's weight? The answer right after this. Which internal organ makes up a quarter of the salmon shark's weight? The answer is the oil-rich liver, which gives the fish buoyancy. Along the Alaskan coast, fishermen are vanishing without a trace. I want to know if salmon sharks, close relatives of the great white, would ever attack someone who fell into the icy water. I've teamed up with shark scientist Scott Anderson to attempt the ultimate test. I will jump into a shark feeding frenzy to see how they react. I'm going in without any protective equipment, just a dry suit and a snorkel, but I'm staying close to the boat in case they appear ready to attack. Now that I'm in the water, I feel incredibly vulnerable. More and more sharks emerge from the gloom, chasing the bait with spectacular agility and speed.
That shark took that herring right in front of my face, saw its mouth open, and then it just turned away. They're feeding, but not on me so far.
Then the sharks close in and I'm surrounded. They're striking at herrings only a few feet away. They appear to home in on anything small and silver, just like the fish they target. One shark carefully skirts around me to attack one of our shiny underwater cameras.
Very, very close feeding action there. One took the herring right in front of my face. It was coming towards me, but I think it was totally focused on that herring. I was there as a sort of an obstacle.
It was an unnerving experience, but what's important is that I emerged unscathed.
These fish are definitely in feeding mode, no doubt about that, but they're not going for people. That is shark mythology. The reality about these ones is they're focused on fish.
When shark attacks do happen, it's very often a case of mistaken identity. Here, these large-eyed visual predators could easily tell me apart from their target prey, and they avoided any contact.
As soon as you hear the word shark, it's the normal human tendency to cast them as the villain, but having tested this assumption as thoroughly as I possibly could, I'm forced to the conclusion that these sharks here pose no threat to people. So where does that leave us? Maybe there's something else down there.
My search for dangerous Alaskan fish has led me from the rivers to the nearby coastal waters. I wonder, if a shark isn't to blame, is there another fish big enough to drag or knock someone out of his boat? Back in town, I head to the docks. If there are other monstrous fish offshore, someone here is bound to have run into them. I ask around and find fisherman Chris Knowles, who has an almost unbelievable story.
We were out for the day fishing, my buddy and I, in a small raft, and this 200-pound fish comes up to the surface, and my buddy Steve lunged at it with a harpoon, and I went to throw the hook into its lip, and a weight came and threw my arm down into the mouth of the fish. It just bit down and clamped my arm, and the 200 pounds immediately pulled me over to the side. I reached over the other side of the dinghy, and it starts lifting up like this, and all I can do is just to hold on and keep my head above water. And I'm like, Steve, help. And Steve pulls as hard as he can. The harpoon finally comes out. He falls back and he's flailing in the boat. And I've got a halibut here that's just gnawing on my arm.
So this is a halibut that's got hold of your arm, and it's about 200 pounds, you say?
Well, it's the biggest fish we have in Alaska, next to salmon sharks. And a big halibut, pound for pound, They can do a lot of damage when they get on a boat. That tail gets slapping, they start curling up, they can break deck gear, break legs, break bones.
When this was happening, what was the worst case scenario that was in your mind? What's the worst thing?
Worst case scenario? I'm going down with this halibut. I had that image in my mind. The hook's in me and I'm going down. I was yelling and cussing like I never did before, and spent the next 3 days nursing injuries and cuts all on my hand. The hand was completely cut up, lots of blood.
I'm surprised to hear that Chris hooked this fish very close to shore. The halibut is an unexpected contender, but it is a powerful predator. It looks like I've got another dangerous battle ahead of me. No, 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 no! In southern Alaska, I'm looking for a fish that's big enough to take down a human, and I've just found the most unexpected contender. Chris Knowles was fishing close to shore when a monster-sized halibut that he was trying to bring into the boat nearly dragged him overboard.
Cut the line. Our freezers are...
These giant fish are usually shot in the water
Fish right now. You got the harpoon.
or killed as soon as they're on deck. Handling a live one is asking for trouble.
It was a small dinghy. And,
Chris was fortunate to escape with his life, but he knows of another fisherman who wasn't so lucky. Joseph Cash hooked a halibut weighing more than 150 pounds. When he hauled it onto the deck, the thrashing beast struck him with such force that it broke one of his legs and ruptured his femoral artery. Fearful of falling overboard, the injured fisherman roped himself to the winch. But by the time he was discovered, he'd bled to death. Chris's stories get me thinking. Halibut have been caught along this coastline for centuries. But if this fish really poses such a deadly threat to fishermen in small boats, how were they caught before modern vessels were used? To find out, I arranged to meet commercial fisherman and native Alaskan, June Lankard.
Halibut fishing is really dangerous, it's really hard work, and so traditionally fishermen would really have to design their gear to catch smaller fish. In the old days, our canoes were, at best maybe 20 feet, and if you landed a big halibut, it could flip that boat over or wrap you up in the line. Anything could happen.
June shows me a traditional hook, and its unusual construction is revealing.
So this is designed specifically to avoid the bigger halibut, partly because of how dangerous they can be if you're on a small boat.
Right. Depending on the size of your hook and the space between the hook and this bridge right here would determine what size of fish could actually get their mouth around that hook.
So basically a fish with a big mouth, a big thick jaw, just physically won't get it past that gap, so won't get impaled on the point.
Right.
I have to say, I don't think I've ever seen a hook before that's actually designed to avoid hooking big fish. I mean, it is very ingenious.
Sure, but if you went out there without knowing all these things, and if you landed a big halibut, in some cases, they could be fatal.
When I arrived here, I was unsure where to look for a possible killer. Though halibut are marine predators, they do come right inshore, literally to the river mouths. So anyone fishing here runs the risk of encountering one of these monsters. The largest Pacific halibut ever caught was just under 500 pounds. That's nearly 3 times what I weigh. And they're voracious predators. Salmon, squid, seagulls, and even seals have been found in their stomachs. If you're in a small boat and you hook one of these giant flatfish, it's possibly not the halibut that's going to end up as dinner. Now, with this new suspect on my radar, I want to find out for myself how strong this beast really is.
There's a known halibut spot that we're going to, and what I'm trying to do is prepare myself mentally for catching this fish. The other thing that's on my mind is that big ones, people around here, they don't try and get them in the boat intact and then return them. If they bring them in the boat, they're going to kill them. They're either going to shoot them in the water, they're going to club them, they're going to harpoon them, gaff them. I don't want to do any of that, but that is introducing a whole new layer of challenge. How to get a close look at a big fish without injuring it or me is not really something that anybody's particularly tried to do before.
Fishermen here just don't tangle with large live halibut, but I want to get a good look at this creature and then put it back alive.
This region around here looks a little bit like Jurassic Park. Amazing fishing spot. Very hard to believe that there could be halibut here. This isn't very deep. I was going to say I can't wait to get a line in the water, but what I've heard about some of these fish, it's one of those moments where you're slightly hesitant about the process as well.
I'm using a large plastic jig on 100-pound braided line and dropping it onto the seabed just 30 feet below. The sea floor is the halibut's domain, and I'm hoping to tempt a monster onto my line.
Yes, it's sort of...
It doesn't take long.
Yeah. Should I bring that in? That's something already. There it is, there it is, there it is. Ah, running at the surface. I'm going to let it just go, tire itself out. Oh, off it goes again. Off it goes again. That's fat. Oh. So whatever that was has escaped.
It felt like it was a good-sized fish. I reset and hope I haven't let the big one slip away.
It's a knot. That's a knot.
Yeah. It seems these waters are swarming with these bottom-dwelling predators.
Oh, here we go. It's off, 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 off.
The second it hits the bait, the fish takes off with a turn of speed that catches me off guard.
That turned into quite a powerful dive. I'm getting a very disconcerting and characteristic knocking on the rod. The way these fish swim, it's sort of up and down. It's up and down movement.
Bringing this fish in is going to be an almighty struggle.
I can see it, I can see it. This is the size of a fish.
I'm in the remote wilderness of southern Alaska, where fishermen have gone missing without a trace. And what may be the most dangerous fish in these waters is on the end of my line.
Yeah.
Big halibut are usually killed as soon as they're caught, because no one wants to risk handling a live one. But that's exactly what I want to do now.
It's quite a good size. We're going to go for the net. Yeah, we all ready?
I want to get this fish on board without injuring it or us.
Now? That end. No. Hey, can you get in and just go the left-hand side up? Someone take the rod, please. All right. And down we go. Right. It seems calm now. Should we go for it? Okay, good.
It's really green.
Yep. Dorsal fins there, good. Okay. This is a big halibut. This is 120 odd pounds, heavy to lift, heavy to bring in. And having seen this thing thrash on the surface, I can absolutely believe those stories of when they kick off in a boat, damaging people. We tend to think of flatfish as just food for us, but this is absolutely way up the food chain. This is a predator, and if you're in any doubt of that, just look at the size of the mouth and the teeth there. That will just engulf and then clamp down.
Its large tail and powerful musculature give it explosive acceleration. It is undeniably a very odd-looking beast. A sight hunter with two eyes on one side of its face is something I've never encountered in fresh water. Though this one seems to have calmed down after coming into the boat, I don't want to push my luck.
Okay. When I came to Alaska, I wanted to find out if there is anything under the water that could be responsible for some of these cases of unexplained human disappearances.
And the answer is an unequivocal yes. There is a very large and powerful fish living around the river mouths and inlets of this remote coastline.
Yeah.
In a fight with one of these, it would be perfectly possible for an unlucky fisherman to be dragged down and lost in the cold coastal waters. At least one fisherman is known to have been killed by a huge halibut, and they have long been treated with respect by native Alaskans. In these hostile waters, storms and boating accidents do take many lives, but hooking one of these monsters could also be surprisingly deadly.
And in fact, having heard all that I have about this fish, I actually consider myself very lucky to have walked away from my encounter unscathed.